So now we're going to move over to the next section, and let me quickly turn this off and make sure these are just basically our button, and these are the components that we've created, and this is also the navbar. So we are using, so you notice that this is showing like this is like component, and this is showing that this is an instance of this particular component. So now the next frame that we're going to create is for the featured product. So this featured product is just the product that is currently featured for the week. So we are going to close this up, and I'm going to change this to featured products. So I'm going to move this downward a bit, and then I'm going to drag this downward. So I don't have any height or any measurements in mind. I'm just going to drag it, and this will come after the hero section. So I'm going to move this forward and push this downward. So now it's time to now create the featured image. So we are going to draw out like a banner here, a banner that's going to hold some cool stuff. So now we are just going to change the feel of this to gray. Then I'm going to change this to like 24. Let's see how it goes. It looks okay. So I want the distance between this and this to be like 100. Let me see how that looks, please. Alright, it's very close to this, so but we're just going to use it anyways. Oh, let me try. You know, let's just leave this. We might make some corrections when we are actually working on the mock-up rather. So let's add an auto layout to this. Let's add an auto layout to this section. So don't forget the top and bottom padding is supposed to be 100. So the top and bottom padding is 100, and this should be like 120, please. So now we've adjusted this. So the next thing is to do now is to create the features. I'm sorry, the discounts. So we have like flat 25% discounts. So now that we have this, we're going to use Shift A to add like components so that we can have padding around it. And I'm just going to leave this at 10 and leave this at 20. Always double the size. And I'm going to add white color randomly so that I can actually reduce the opacity to like 20. Or let's just leave it at 40. And then give it 100% corner radius. And name this. So this is going to be like and then this is going to be discounts tag. So now that we have that, so we are just going to change the image inside of this to our black color. So now I want this to have like this is what I'm just going to do. I just want this to have like about like 80. So I might not really follow the layout grid, or if I'm to follow the layout grid, we'll still do like some testing and see if the spaces are too much. If they're not too much, we'll just leave it. So I'm just going to start from here then. So 102, could just leave this at this. So now the next thing we're just going to do is now add the text. So we're going to call it weekly fresh picks. And for this, we're just going to use our H1. Let's see how H1 looks. H1 bold. Yeah, I think this is nice. So I'm just going to leave this at 20. So I'm going to leave this at 20, and then I'm going to come down here and duplicate this holding alt. So I'm going to change get hand picked organic groceries delivered straight to your door. I know you can't see the text, so I'm just going to reduce it to our body text. So our body text, we're going to change it to body text and let's put it at regular. So you see, I think we spelled something. Straight to your door. Get hand pick organic groceries delivered to your door. So now that we have this, we're just going to change the color for this. I want it to be black, so I'm just going to change it. Oh no, not the text. So I'm just going to change this to black because this is what we should be. And I'm just going to add auto layout to this and change this. I think it looks okay. I'm just going to change to header plus text. We have the discount tag. So the discount tag should come to the top. And finally, we are going to have like some buttons down here. So I'm just going to duplicate what we already have up here. So we don't have to create anything. I'm just going to copy it and come down here and just select this and paste. Don't worry, it's not, both of them are not buttons because we are going to detach one of these. So we just want one showing the displaying the price tag and the other one. So this is just going to be 40 and I'm going to move this to the right. So this is the one we are going to detach because this is not going to be a button and it's not going to be clickable on this project. So we are just going to remove the strokes and change this to white, and then we're just going to put our before and after price. So the before price is, we're going to change this to Naira sign shortly, and you can just go back to Google and search the Naira sign or whatever dollar sign, or let's use the dollar sign instead. So I'm just going to change this to dollar, and let's say it was $49 before, that is 39.99 before, and now the price now is let's just say um 29 $29 now, so it's now like $29.99. So we're just going to change this to, so we're just going to make a little edit to this. We're going to make it as a slash price, and then we're going to change it to our gray color. So let's change it to the gray color. This is going to be the gray color, and this is going to be our black color. But let's see how it looks with the color though. This looks nice. Let's just leave it at this, and then I'm just going to change this to like 8. That's the gap between them, or the gap between them should even be like 4, and then we can just leave this at this and probably increase the sizes. So I'm just going to increase the sizes and see. Let's use regular page 4, and I think this is looking too big. So we're just going to leave it at what it was before and see how that goes. So this looks nice, and then I'm just going to go over here and just create a quick box indicating that there is going to be like an image here. So you know what, this, we are going to turn off this layout grid because we want our banner to have its own layout grid. So I'm just going to turn this off. We can always add it. So I'm just going to change this and add our grid here and see how it looks. So our desktop grid, though for this we're not going to work with this, we're just going to customize it and give it our own grid. So this, we just want the pattern should be like 18, and yeah, so now you see how it looks. So we are just going to select this and this and add auto layout to it. So I'll quickly name it. Let's quickly arrange this. So anytime you're adding auto layout, don't forget you're adding from inside out, not outside in. So this is discount tag plus header. So now that we have this, so we can now add this. So this particular one, I think we're just going to leave it. It's not going to be button, it's going to be price tag plus CTA. That's the button. And then we're just going to make this. So this rectangle is just going to serve as the image that we're going to put there. Then we're going to select this and this and add auto layout to it. And then I'm going to, oh shit, I think I clicked something different. So I'm going to rename this to header plus CTA. So now that we have this, so then the image will be at the right. Then we can now adjust this to fit our 80 margin. We're going to center this properly. In this, I'm just going to make sure that this also follows our 80 margin. And then I just drag this to fit to this point, and then make sure that this also follows our 80 margins. Let's see what this works. Oh, not bad, but I think this is still okay. So we're just going to make sure that it maintains that 80 margin. So I'm just going to add I won't add auto layout to this, but I want this to maintain like 80 margin up and bottom. So I'm just going to select this and make sure I change this to 80, and then I'm going to drag this until it fits. Okay, I think there's like constraints to this, so we are just going to edit the constraint. So I'm going to remove the constraint. I'm going to make it top and sideways. So when we create our so when we drag it, it doesn't stop. So yeah, so oh no, why is it following this? Shouldn't follow this, instead it should follow the other one. So I'm just going to center this and try again. I think this one is kind of like having the marginal constraint thing. So we're just going to make them have equal lengths, and then I'm just going to equal height rather. So this is like 232. So I'm going to change this also to 323, 232 rather, the height. And then I'm just going to center this properly. Just going to center this and center this. So at the end of the day, we want it to be 80 top and bottom. I think it's still dragging it. I don't know why. Let me check for the constraints. Constraint has reset. So I'll just change the constraints. I don't want it to move as I keep clicking it. So I'm just going to remove the vector edit mode and click on this. So now I'm going to select this and try to, let's make sure this is center, top and bottom in the middle before we try to drag it. So let me drag it again. You know what? I think I'll just add auto layout to this to just make my work easier instead of trying to go back and forth. I think auto layout has done it. So I'll just have to remove this and change this to 12. So one last thing before we move forward, I'm just going to add like this little stamp, or maybe like a seal. So for that, we're just going to use the star. So for the star, I'm just going to draw this, and I'm now going to increase the count till I can't number anymore. And then we're just going to increase this, increase this, increase this, increase this. I think this is okay. So now I'm just going to move this inside of our frame. And then I'm just going to change this. This doesn't have to be 80 though. Can just leave this at 40. So this looks good at 40. I'm just going to center it properly. Yeah. And then I'm going to change this color to black. So I'm going to change this to black, and I want it to be on top of this. And finally, we are just going to add text in this, and the text is going to say 25% off. So now we're going to change this to, let's see which one works. Let's change it to semi-bold of this. Let's change it to bold of this. I think it's okay. Then I'll just center it properly and group them. So I'm just going to group it. I'm just going to call this seal or whatever it is. And then I'm just going to leave it at this. So now we are done with that section, I guess. So let me see how that looks. Okay, so this is how we look. So this is indicating that we are going to have like a little image here. So this is what we have so far. So we are going to turn off the layout grid. I don't think we need the layout grid anymore. And so we are now going to go over to our next section. So now that we are done with the featured product, I'm just going to go up again and close this. We already have our hero featured section, and now we're just going to go over to editing the next section. So the next section is going to be our explore, or we're going to see like the product categories that we have. So I'm just going to draw this again and call this product categories. Yeah, so I'm just going to, so I don't have any measurements in mind for this. I'm just going to drag it anywhere I want to drag it. Let me increase this particular frame. Let me increase the desktop frame, and then I'm just going to select this. Let's see. So now that we've named this, I'll just push this, the navbar. I'll just push it to the top, and then the product category is left to be next. So we are just going to close up the space. So now that we've closed off the space, so now it's now time to bring in our headings. So let me just turn off this particular grid. So we don't need any grid here anymore. So this is what we have so far. So the next thing I'm just going to do now is just to add the header. So the header for this section is explore our organic pics. So now that we've actually added this, we're just going to change this to H4 looks not bad, but let me change it to our H3. So I think H3 looks cool. So we want this top and bottom to be 80, and this, so I think it's only this that we are going to have like the top and bottom to be 100. Or let's add top and bottom 100 here, but we are not going to add auto layer yet. Let's finish creating the whole thing. So let me check. So let me leave it at 100. Yeah. So now that we have 100, the next thing we are going to create now is the categories. So we are going to create the categories that the user can toggle between, to see other categories. So to create that, I'm just going to create like a frame, a square, and then I'm just going to leave it at probably like 200 or something. I think 200 is too much, so we're just going to leave it at like 160 and see. 160 doesn't look bad, so I'm just going to add like a fill. Probably we'll reduce it like in the future or something, but I think this doesn't look bad though. Let me see how large that looks. It looks a bit too big, so let's try reducing it to 120 and seeing how it looks. So it's 120. Not looking bad. I think it's quite okay also. So I'm just going to select this and try to see. I think 60 is okay. So I'm just going to change the corner radius to 12. So yeah, so I like this. So the next thing we're just going to do, we're going to name this category. Let's say this category is called fruits. Wow, I think we are typing outside, which is not bad. We're just going to fix that in a minute. Let me quickly change the fonts. Before changing the font, let me push this to the bottom. Oh no, I think I pressed the rest. We want to shift the particular font to the bottom. So I used Ctrl Z to come back to this. So yeah, so now we're going to change this to, I think placeholder text won't be bad on this. So we're just going to change this to semi-bold or placeholder text and see how it looks. So it's too tiny. So we're going to use probably paragraph 2 semi-bold. Still not looking bad. Let me just use paragraph semi-bold. Paragraph 1 semi-bold. I think this looks fine. So we're just going to add like a little rectangle that indicates that we're going to have a frame. We're going to have like an object. So the object might just be like, probably we're just going to give it like, lock the aspect ratio and give it like 120. Let's see. 120 is too much. I think 80 looks okay. No. Or what about 40? We're just going to leave it at 60. So whatever object that we're going to add is going to be around 60. So I'm just going to add auto layer to this, or yeah, auto layer to this, and see. But I don't want to scatter this. I want this to be in a square form. So we're just going to add top and bottom margin to be like 12, and the right side to also be 12. It's going to, okay, that doesn't work. So we're just going to leave it to be anything. We're just going to leave it at this. So this is like 60, and then we're going to center this properly. We might also edit this. We are going to definitely edit this later on. So I'm going to center this and check this and make sure this is also centered. Yeah. You know what? I'll just remove the auto layer. I don't think we'll need the auto layer. So let me check the gap. I think the gap should be like 12. So I'm just going to change the gap. Oh, let's edit it from here. So now this is how it looks. Or let's just reduce this. I think this should be good to be like, I think I added 60. Let's just change it to 40. we don't really know how it's going to look, but let me just try keeping this as little as possible. So we're just going to leave this as something as this. And then I'm going to make this, let me push this outside and make it a component. So we're going to make it a component. So we are going to say product. We're going to name it products cards. So these are the categories that users are going to toggle. And then I'm just going to change this. Then make this a component and add a variant. So the variant will not have any color. The variant, the text and the inner box is just going to be white. So we are going to remove the fill for this and change this to be gray. So this instead will now be gray, and the text will also be gray. But we are going to change all this later on though. So I'm going to edit the text. So the text should be editable. So for the text, what we are just going to do is just to add this property, component property, and add it. So when we add this, we're just going to call it text content. So now that we have the text content, so now I can now come back here. Although, let me go back there and edit the state, please, so that we know which state we are working with. So, oh no, let me change this to state. This is the default state, and this is like the selected state. So I'm going to change this to no, on selected. So and lastly, I think we need like a hover state also. So I'm just going to add this as a variant and change this. This will be hover state. So this would be probably like 20% of whatever color that we add. So I'm just going to change this to like 20% or 40% of the color. So which we might select a better color though. But when we get to that bridge, we're going to cross it. So we are going to edit everything to actually fit what it is. So state 3 will now be our hovered state. So now we're going to select this particular state, copy it, and then come over here and paste to replace. So now that we're pasted to replace, I'm just going to duplicate this and move this and change it to our variant 2 unselected. And then I'm going to select this and this, make it a component. Sorry, not component, add auto layout to it. Now after adding auto layout to it, I probably like I want this down to be like 40. Then we can now edit the text of this one. Well, let's duplicate it into like 4 places. So this is 2, 3, 4. So for this, I'm going to change this to vegetables. So I'm just going to change it to vegetables. Okay, I think we will need to fix that then. And we're just going to change this to juice. And then we're finally going to change this to bamboo. Alright, so to fix this, we're just going to go over to the main component and try to adjust some things. Did I add auto layout to this? Let me confirm, please. There's no auto layout to it, and it's still disturbing our font. So we're just going to change this, and change the layout into this. Yeah. So now we have it correct and the way we want it. So now that we've done this, now we're now going to create our product card, which is now the next thing that we need to create. We're going to create our product card. So to create our product card, we'll just create our product card outside and bring it in. So for the product card, I'm just going to draw like a frame. Or you know what, let's draw it inside so that we can turn on, let's turn on our layout grid so we can be able to edit it. Let's turn on our layout grid and edit it on the layout grid. I think it would make perfect sense to do it that way. So we're just going to come over here and bring it in. Yeah. So we have brought it into the product card. I want it to just cover like, let's see if it covers 3, how many can we have? If it covers 3, so I'm just going to lock the aspect ratio so that it reduces everywhere, reduce while I reduce it. Then, so we're just going to try and cover this up. Ooh. Yeah. So, and make sure that it's still 120 there. Don't mind it popping out. So I'm just going to duplicate it oh no, let me just add like let me add strokes around it so that we can see what we are doing. And then I'm just going to make this like 24. I don't know if 24 is too much, but let's see. I think 24 is too much actually. So we are just going to change this to like 12. So how does 12 look? 12 looks okay and amazing. So now is that time where I'm just going to still stretch this a little so we can see everything that we're doing. 100, not bad. But we're not going to use this for this in the final. So we're just going to select this. We're going to just add auto layout to this boat and make sure the gap between them is like 20. So I'm just going to duplicate it, duplicate, and duplicate one more last time. So we're also going to have like other things outside, but so now that we've achieved this, I think it's high time we now add auto layout to this one, to this frame. So I just want this to have like 60. I don't know how 80 looks, but let's just see how this looks. I think the spacings are a bit much. So I might just reduce this to like 60, or this will even be like 40 something. So this looks like 40, and let me see if I use 40 here. Let's see how it looks. 40 doesn't look bad. I think it's okay like this. So everything fits in one screen. And don't forget our navigation bar is supposed to also be here. We're going to do that settings later. So now that we have this, I think we can turn off our layout grid now and reason properly. Alright, so I'm going to close this off, but I will leave the clip content open, because if I close the clip content, you won't be able to see the other aspect, this other aspect. So I'm just going to unlock the clip content. So this is what we are going to use now. So now we are going to make sure these photos are matching, but at the same time the clip content stuff is still visible. So now we're just going to use this first frame to create the components. So now that I have this, I can now copy this and move it outside. So I'm just going to draw a little frame so that I can bring it outside. I want to paste it exactly here. So I'm just going to paste to replace. Now we have it. So I'm going to call this product card. So now that we have the product card, it's time to work. Now the first thing that we're going to add is we're going to add like a frame that is going to host the products. So this frame, I want the distance between top and bottom should be like 8. Probably like 8 is okay, or 4. I think 4 looks better. 4 round is looking better. Let's see. We'll fix that shortly. Let me just add like a little gray stroke around it so that I see what I'm doing, please. And then this corner radius, we can just leave it at 8. And let's see. Yeah. So I'm just going to increase this and see. Let's see if it has worked. Oh no. So I don't want any of this smart place there. I'm just going to center it properly and see how that goes. I think this looks okay. I think this looks okay. Ignore the whole decimal place out there. So now we're just going to reduce this to probably like 200. Let's see how the other details will react beneath it. If it doesn't react properly, then we might just reduce it further. But for now, I think we're just going to add like a little 20% off right up here. And we're going to call this 20% off. So this particular tag is going to be used to indicate if there's a discount on this particular thing, and if there's no discount, another thing it can actually show if it's out of stock. So that's the two things that is going to be visible here. So I'm going to call this 25% discount, and then I'm just going to reduce it. So I'm going to reduce it to, I think, placeholder, semi-bold of placeholder is quite okay. Oh no, we're not supposed to have like discount. Discounts will just make it look oh, sorry, I think I've gone out. Okay, so I'm just going to reduce this, and we're just going to call this 20% off. Alright, so now that we have it, I'm just going to push it inside of this and use Shift A to add auto layout to it, which is too much, and I'm just going to change this to 4, and the two sides should be 8. And then I'm just going to add like a little fill and then change this to like 20% so it can be transparent. So let's change it to 40, or let's just leave this at black. Let's change this to black, please, and change this to 40%. Change your opacity to 40%. I think 40% is okay. So I'm just going to use like, probably let's use 8 and 8 here. So I'm going to change the corner radius to 4. So now that we have this is 20% off. And then the next part is where we are going to have our wish, to add it to the wish list. That's, we are stimulating all this. Well, I don't think that's necessary because this is basically just like a landing page, so there's no need to add to wish list and all that. So we're just going to, because they are definitely not going to be checking out with this. So we are going to go to the next part, which is like the project type, the product category, which this is going to indicate that this is under the fruits. And we're going to use the placeholder regular text, which I think this is already perfect. Or let's change it to semi-bold. I think semi-bold is just too much. Let's leave it to regular and then duplicate this and let's change this to pineapple. Why does it keep actually displaying this way? So I'm just going to change this to like our semi-bold of H4. Oh, that looks too big. Let me put a semi-bold of this, and let's see. Let's give it like distance of 8. And finally, we're going to add another icon very soon. So to don't have any icon, I'm just going to draw this, and I'm going to make it like 16. So let's lock the aspect ratio and make it 16 to indicate that an icon is going to be there. And then let's make sure the distance from this is like 12 or something. Then I'm going to drop this also, but I'm going to give this our grid fill. So I'm going to change our grid fill. I'm going to change it to 500 gram. Yep. So I'm going to select this and this and add auto layout to it. And so we have it. So I'm going to change the alignment to this, and I think it is okay. And then we're now going to add like a little line that's going to cut across from here to here. So let's see let's check the distance we want to have from this to the end of this. I think 12 is not bad actually. So we're just going to, let's leave this as what we have it. And let's just probably like add 2 more to this to make it like, or let's just make it like 60 and see. So I think this is okay. 12 is okay for this. Or let's just change it to like 16. Then we're just going to change it to 0.5. And then we'll change it to our gray color. And then finally, we're just going to add another. Let's just bring this down here. So there's going to be an icon, and then we're just going to actually add the price. So the price is going to be $12. That's 00 cents. And we're going to duplicate this. And this is going to also be our price also. Let's just see now the price is lesser. Let's just say $8. Or let's just leave it at 00 also. So I'm just going to select both of these and add up the layout to it and change it to like 4. So this is going to be black color, and this is going to, let's just change this to medium, and then we're going to edit this and add a little stroke to show that this is like the former price. And finally, we're going to add our button for our add to cart. So we're just going to add cart here. So now this is what we have, and then this is what we have, and we're just going to align this properly, then make sure everything is intact. So since we're having 12, we're just going to maintain 12, and for this I'm just going to add this into like one auto layout and leave this at auto, And then 12 is okay actually. And then the final thing that we're going to add is just like a little star symbol here to indicate the ratings on this project, on this particular product. So we're going to leave this at 16, and I'm just going to add corner radius of like 2. I think it's too much. I think 1 is okay. So 1 is okay. I'm just going to push it inside of here and add a little text for the rating. So let's just say this is like 4.2 rating. And then we're just going to select this and select both of them and add auto layout. So we are going to group all these and quickly name them, please. So let's quickly do that now. So this is like 4.2 ratings, and we want to also make sure that it's like 12 from the end here. And let's check the size we gave to this paragraph 1. Really, let's change it to paragraph 2 semi-bold. I think it's okay that way. So let's just change this to rating. Let me change this to ratings. And this is like divider. The line will be like the divider. And then let's change this to price plus CTA. And then let's come down here and name this to price. And this will be like icon. This is where we're going to replace with icon. And finally, this is like the amount. And then we're going to close this and close the pricing, and then come over to this. So this will be add to carts, and that will be our icon. So I think we have everything we need. This is under ratings. So we're just going to try as much as possible to edit all this. And let's just put weight. This will be like the weight. And this is like the title, and this is so. Finally, I'm going to put products image is going to stay here. Then this is like the discount or tag. So now that we have this, but before we move forward, I would just like to add auto layout to most of all this. So we are adding auto layout from the inside out, so that when we add the final auto layout, we are not going to have a scattered layout. So I'm just going to change this to category plus item name, and we already have this and this. So I'm just going to add this to item name plus weight. So now we are going to add it in the same auto layout. We're going to add auto layout with the rating, so everything will be balanced. So we're going to put it at the top, and it's going to be auto, and we're going to put it item details plus ratings. So since we have that, that's what we have. So now we are now free to add auto layout to this. So I'm just going to add auto layout to the entire card and see how that goes. So now this is what we have, and we are just going to change one thing. You see, it's maintained the same 4 padding that we have here down here, but down here we want 12 padding, so we are going to edit that manually to 12. And now that we have 12 there, so 4 is okay, and we're just going to see how that works. So we are going to add all this inside of a frame to make it its own section, so that we can actually play with it. So I want the gap to be like 16. I would like the gap to be 16, so everything can be spaced out correctly. And let's say 12 is okay. Then we are going to change this to fill, so it fills the container, and I think this is also okay. Or we are going to leave this at fill, but we are going to have like an inner padding of like 8 inside of it, so everything can be filled, but at the same time maintain what we want. All right, so let's see how that goes. I think this is it. We're just going to now add it inside of our. So let's quickly make this a component, and then copy it, and we can now select all of this So I'm just going to zoom out, select this also, select this, and finally select this. Then we're now going to right click to paste to replace. So now that we have this inside of this, so anything we edit at this side is going to affect this. So I'm just going to see how that looks quickly. Wow, I think this looks great. I think we don't need to edit anything. I think this looks okay. So we'll just have to move on. But I think the space down here is too close. So I'm just going to multiply this by 4 and add 16 down here. So to do that, we're just going to come over here and I'm just going to edit the down padding to be like 16 so everything looks balanced. So one more thing that we're going to do, we are just going to quickly add properties to all of this so we can edit them. So we are going to add this property here. So we are going to change this to tag. We are going to change this to tag. So we're going to change this to tag contents. Tag contents. So we can manually edit it. And we're going to also change the visibility of this entire tag up here. So I'm going to add like a quick appearance property. So I'm going to say show tags, which is okay. So I'm going to create property so it's currently visible. And then I'm going to add property to this also. So this is the product category, the item category. So we're going to change this here to, we're going to add this, add another text property here, but this will be like item category. So make sure to watch the tutorial video so you understand what I'm doing basically. So here we are going to item. So we are going to change this to item. So we are going to change this to item width. Item width. Then we are just going to change this to old and new price. So this will be old price. This will be old price. We're going to change this to old price. Old price. And then we're going to change this to new price. We're going to change this to new price. New price. And then finally we're going to change this to ratings. So we are going to add that. I think that's that for that. I think there's no other thing that we want to add. So we can easily edit most of all these things. So let me select this and edit the entire thing. Let's see which one come first. So we're going to move this to the top. I want to move this to the top. I'm going to move the show tag first before the tag content, and then the item category will come next, then the item with the old price. So the old price, the new price, and then the rating. So why I didn't add the icons is because we've not added the icons. So that's why I'm not going to add that. So we are just quickly going to edit all of this. So for this first card, I'm just going to select this first card and edit the content that I want there. So now if you see the show tag, if we turn off the show tag, you see it has turned off the tag's off, which we don't want to turn off the tag. We're just going to change the category details. So fruits, pineapple, I think the first one is good to go. So we're just going to change this one. We're going to change this to, I think we're just going to edit this later on. Let's just continue. I think we'll just edit this later on. So now we are finally done with, okay, I can now add auto layout to this. Let me quickly add auto layout to this. So everything is centered properly and they have like a padding of 100 top and bottom and 120 by the right. So now we are done with this particular field. I think this is how it looks. We're going to continue now to the next section. So we're going to bring in the next section. So we're going to just draw a frame. So let's change to 1440, and then we are going to center it properly and make sure that the distance between this and this is 0. Because if you notice, let me quickly rename it to about. So let's close this and let's close this. So this is supposed to be the about. So the about is going to come at the very least. So this is basically the about section. We're just going to add a layout to that later on. But for now, let's quickly write out more the details of what we want. So what we detail that is going to be here is fresh cards. Let me zoom in. Fresh cards sources directly from trusted local farms to deliver the fresh produce to your door. You then comma no stress. So that's that for that. So we are just going to change this to our H1, obviously. H1 bold. So we are just going to reduce this, change this to like 12200, so that it actually centers and fits into our 12 column grid. Then we're going to change this to center. But before that, I just have like a little edit I want to add. I want to add like a little space where we are going to add a little image, and then the final one will just be, we're not going to add like another image here also. So the image we're going to add here, we're just going to add like, use a rectangle to indicate that an image is going to be there. So I'm just going to add like a little image. I think 124 is okay. And then I'm just going to change the border radius to 100. Yeah, and I'm going to center it properly. So same thing, we're still just going to come down here, collect this and push this here. Then push this down a bit, and then another, we'll have like another detail here. So it's not really that centered, so I'm just going to add some space down here. Alright, so we're just going to leave it at that though. Yeah, so I'm just going to push this just push this over here. So I added space to be able to move it. So I think this is it. So let's see how that looks basically. So this is what we want to achieve. So now that we have that, we're just going to put that inside of the group and make sure everything is intact together. So when you're developing, all of this is just going to be in absolute positioning, all the floating elements. So we're just going to group this and just link content. So now this about us section, we're now gonna add an auto layout to it and make sure it's 100 up and 100 down. Just like the rest, 100 up, 100 down, 100 up, 100 down. So now that we have this, let's quickly check how it looks. So this is what we currently have. So we are going to move further to actually talk about the frequently asked questions. But before the frequently asked questions, let's quickly talk about clients' testimonials. So for the client testimonials, I'm just going to, you know what, let's just duplicate this particular. Oh no, I'm not going to duplicate. Let me just create it from scratch, just like the other ones. So I'm just going to create this, and then we're going to call this clients, or yeah, user feedbacks. All right, so we're going to have user feedbacks down here. So I'm just going to drag this and copy this header here. I like the way this header is. I just don't want to replicate it. I think this is already like H3 bold. So since we already know that, let me just come here and just write what I want to write and change it to H3 bold. So we're going to call it what our any users are seeing. So I'm just going to center this properly. Our H3 bold, wow, it's already um, adjusted. So now we're just going to create like this little, so we're going to make this into four places. So I'm just going to select 4. Just like the other one, after changing it to 4, I'll just duplicate it so that I make sure that it's divided accurately. So we're going to change this to our gray color and change this to 0.5 and then add corner radius of like 12 to it. Alright, so I'm just going to duplicate this and then adding auto layout to it before now adding gap of like 20, then duplicating the final one. So now let's see how that looks shortly. Alright, so since we already have this, I can now add auto layout to the entire frame and make sure the gap is like 60 max. Alright, so up and bottom should be like 100 and we have this to be 120, our margin to be 120 as always. So let's see how that looks. So this is how it looks, what our any users are saying. So now we're now going to take one of these outside and edit it before bringing it back in as our components. So we're going to name this testimonial. And then we're going to add our white fill. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is to add like a little star. And we're going to leave this at probably like, let me put it maybe 24. So let's see, 24 is too big. If it's too big, we can come back and always edit it. So corner radius will just be like 1. So we just have a little corner radius there. So I'm just going to duplicate it and I'm going to call it star. Let's just leave it as star, please. Copy this and edit this also and edit that star. Then we're going to select both of them and add auto layout to it and name it rating. And then the distance between them, we can just leave the distance between them as 8 and then duplicate in 5 places. Alright, so I'm now going to change this to like 4, distance of 4, and we're going to leave this at 2020. Yeah, so we're going to leave this at 20. Well, 16 is okay. We're going to definitely look at it later. And I don't have any text in mind to actually put, so I might just put like something like Lorem Ipsum and see how that goes. So let's see if we can bring in some Lorem Ipsum text. So I really don't like using Lorem Ipsum in my design. I hope as I've clicked outside, it's not going to ruin this thing. So I'm just going to try and create it again. It's been a while I use Lorem Ipsum, but I'm just going to try and add Lorem Ipsum to this. Alright, so we can add Lorem Ipsum for your info. So I'm just going to add some texts and then try to add Lorem Ipsum. So this is not going to be placeholder text, so we're just going to make it as with this. And then we're going to change it to like a fixed something. Then we're just going to drag and drag. Then we're going to change the alignments, make sure the alignment. So we're going to select all of this and then right click and make sure, okay, it's not really still showing. So I'm just going to click outside and right click and go to plugins. And then we're going to check my saved plugins and I see if I have Lorem Ipsum. Yeah, I have Lorem Ipsum there. So I'm just going to add Lorem Ipsum. Or instead of using Lorem, so what if we just use content rules instead? So I'm just going to use content rules. I think Lorem is taking forever. Oh my god, I don't have content rules here, so I'm just going to go to manage plugin and add content rules. Wow, that's surprising though. So we're just going to run the plugin. So this is where we're going to go over to text and Lorem. So I just select the text. In fact, you know what? I've changed my mind. I'm no longer going to be using Lorem. So I'm just going to put in actual text, even if it's going to take us a lot of time to do that. So I'm just going to put in actual text. I don't have time for Lorem. So let's just do this. So I switch to fresh cards a month ago, and I am never going back. The veggies are super fresh and delivery is fast. So this is what we want, and this is what we want. So I think I might just reduce this, and then we will need to have to add like a little stroke or a divider. So I'm going to add like a divider, and I'm going to change this to 0.5, and I'm going to change this to a gray color. Why not? Gray color is nice. So finally, the next thing we're now going to add is user profile icon, which is going to be 40, obviously. And we're just going to change the aspect ratio and change this to 40. And then we're going to change this to our username and our location. So we're going to change it to Ada, Lekki, Lagos. So we're going to select this together and add the layout to it, and then give it like a gap of like 12. I think gap of 12 looks great, and this is looking too shiny for my liking. Oh, I didn't even go to 0.5 anymore. I think this is okay now. So now one thing that we're now going to do now is to add auto layout to it. So we're going to add auto layout to it and see how that moves. Oh, I think we reduce the weight a little. I'm just going to check the other width and actually see how we can improve it. But for now, I think the gap should be like 12. Is it looking too small? Oh, I don't know. I think this is perfect. Then we might just add like a little, let's change everything to fill, please. So it's responsive. So everything is just going to be fill, so they are responsive. And this is going to be fill also, please. It's going to be fill. So we are also going to edit this shortly, but let me just change this height to about like 80. Regardless, it is okay. So now that we have this, I don't know how long this is going to be, but let's change this to paragraph 2 instead. Yeah, I think this looks great. So now that we've done this, we're just going to make this a component and edit as we go. So let me just make sure, let me confirm the width of this. So this is 387 as the width, 387. And we have 360s here, so 387. Let's change this to 387. Yeah, so this is exactly what we want. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm just going to copy this since we already have it. And I'm definitely now going to select all of these three and paste to replace. So we are going to have like variants of this and this. So now we are going to post and replace, and let's see how that looks, please. Alright, so we're going to put it outside, change the settings, the outline settings to outside. I don't think, let me change the outline settings to outside and see how that looks. Alright, everything is very visible and clean at the same time. So we're just going to edit the details. So to edit the details, we're going to make this actually like add properties to this. So we are going to change this to So feedback contents. So feedback. So let's just leave it as feedback, and then let's leave this at user details. So I'm just going to add it as user details. User details. So now that we have that, we can easily edit this. So now we can now come here and edit. So we are just going to select no need to actually select all this. We're just going to select this, and now we can now see what we can edit. So for this, what we have here is we'll quickly edit it. So I'll just put the juice are amazing, then like an exclamation, pure, comma, cold, rest, no nonsense, comma. No, I think that's full stop, just words. That is small letter items in there. Just what I've been looking for. Alright, so we're going to change that to enter and make sure that that's what was written there. Now we're going to change this user details to Chioma, VI, Lagos. And then we're just going to enter the last card. So we're just going to hit tab to go to the next card. And then we're going to edit it as I love that I know exactly where my the taste way better than supermarkets stuff. So now we'll just hit enter and our client or user details to Ikeja, Lagos. So now we've edited all those details. So we have different details for each of. Let me zoom that out back. So we have different details for each of our clients. I think this looks perfect. So we're just going to move forward. So let's quickly arrange our layouts and let's see. User feedbacks. Let's just change this to contents. Since we already have feedbacks, user feedbacks at the top there. So we want this to be at the bottom. So after the about should be after the about. So it's good to practice this so you can get acquainted with the layout and how the layout works. So we are done with that. We're just going to push this frame down a bit. So I'm going to drag it. I don't want to drag it anymore. So I'm just going to drag it as much as I can. So let's quickly create the frame for that. So we are going to name this frequently as not frequently asked questions. I think let me add corner radius to this first. Think of what we are going to add there. Yeah, so then we're going to call this the join. So now for this, we're just going to bring in like a text. I'll call this get early access to fresh cards. I think one bold is okay. We're just going to leave it like that, and I'm just quickly going to create like some quick input fields. So we're going to create quick input fields. So I'm just going to use this to create an input field though. I'm just going to select one of these. We can create this from scratch, but I just want it to be on the same height with our button. So that's why I'm going to use this to create our input field. So I'm just going to come over here, create a little rectangle so I can paste it. So this is just going to be, our outline is just going to be our white color. And then let's just leave it at this and change it to outside. And then we're going to change the inner contents to shift to the left. And this is going to change to our placeholder text. So the placeholder text, we're going to change to placeholder regular. Yeah. And then we're just going to add like a little. So let me detach this because this is going to be an input. So I'm going to detach this while repurposing this. So I'm going to change this to input field, please. And then I'm just going to add like a little box to indicate that we're going to have an icon there. I don't want us to start adding icons for now. That's why I'm not adding icons yet. So we're just going to change the padding of the size like 12. I think 12 is okay. So we're going to change this to gray. We're going to change this to gray. Look, it makes sense, you know. So I think the corner radius for this should be like 4. I think 4 works best. And then I think that's for that. So might as well just add like a heading text there. So I'm just going to call this like enter your name. So we're just going to change this to regular text. This should be placeholder text, which is fine already. And I'm just going to add this to an auto layout, and then change the gap to it looks okay. And then we're going to change this to input. So now that we have this as input field, I'm just going to change this and add some kind of like contents to this. But before we make that, let's make this a component first, please. And then I'm just going to change this to header. And then I'm going to change to, this will be like placeholder contents. Alright, so that's that for that. So we're just going to copy this. Oh no. I'm just going to copy this and then come over here and paste it. Let's just zoom out and paste. So now that we're going to paste it here, let me see how it appears. Okay, let me just push it downwards a bit. I think our gray, let's change the gray to like white text also. And let's see if everything is displaying, please. I don't want any problem right now. So this is enter your name, and for the other feature, we're going to change it to EG John Doe. So EG John Doe. And then we're going to make sure that it's actually fitting into, so we're going to make it fit into three of these columns. So we're just going to make it fit into 3 of this. Okay, I think it's outside, that's why, but we're now going to stretch it to make sure that it fits into 3. Alright, so now that we have this, I'm just going to duplicate this. I'm going to select this and this, then apply auto layout to it and change the gap to 20 instead of 25. And I'm going to do one last duplicate, and that duplicate we're going to bring in our button to fit into that place. So our button is going to be there. So where's that button? Where's our button? So I'm just going to select this. Let me just copy it direct from here. Just going to copy it. So I'm just going to paste to replace and make sure this fits into 2 objects. Back into, and then you need to select all of these and make sure everything stays down so that it can accommodate this our button. So let me see how that looks. I think this looks great, so I'm just going to go back and we just make sure we add auto layout to the entire frame, and the gap should be like 60, so we are using like a gap of 60, then top and bottom are 100. So let's see, I think 60 is too much, so we are just going to reduce the gap to like 40. Yeah, I think 40 is excellent. Alright, so make sure that it's kind of like 0 from here. It was very far from the last section, so we are going to cover that space. So now that we are done with this, we're going to move over to the next, which is the frequently asked questions. So for the frequently asked questions, I'm just going to create like another frame. Then I'm just going to make sure that everything fits properly. And then I'm going to drag this. Now it's time to add our text. So for the text, we're just going to call it frequently asked question. So now that we have that, we're just going to change it to our header 3 bold. Yeah, so I'm going to make this 400. So center this properly. Now that we have that, the next thing we are going to do now is just to create the different variations for the questions. So I want it to be very, very long. So we're going to have like 2 states for this actually, but let's call it FAQ. And then we're going to give it like a 24 corner reviews, but that's too much. 12 looks perfect. So I'm just going to bring in some text, and first I'm just going to no, let's bring in text first. So the first question will be what makes fresh cards other grocery services? So that's a nice question there. We're going to just change this to our header 4, semi bold. Then I'm just going to change this to probably like 20 top and bottom maybe. That will depend on the icon we're going to add by this side. So this is going to host an icon. This icon is just going to be like, let's keep it at 40 and see if it's too much. Let's see if 40 is too much. But let's just keep it at, so I think 24 is too small, so let me just keep it at 32. I think 32 is okay. So I'm just going to add a fill color of black and then give it like 100% corner radius. And I'm going to select this and this and add it to layout to it. And then we're just going to make it okay. There's no fill currently because I have not added I've not added auto layout to the entire frame. So let's just leave it at that. I think that's okay for now. And I'm just going to quickly add some texts and just add like a random text. So fresh cards delivers only organic, farm fresh produce sourced directly from trusted local middlemen. Oh, no. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to add, let me change this to regular 2. Yeah, no middleman. Preservation. Just pure food stuff. So now we are quickly going to add like one more. So before we add fill, I'll use fill to correct all that shortly. So I'm just going to add like an outline, and we're going to change it to our gray color and change this to 0.5. So now that we have it at this, I'm just going to add auto layout to this entire thing, and then we're just going to add padding 20, and top and bottom also we have 20, and then we're just going to have gap of like 20 also. So now that we have gap of 20, I'm just going to make sure that everything is on fill so that they actually maximize the whole thing. To fill container. So this is going to fill. This is also going to be filled, so it will push this to the edge. Alright, so since we already have this, and what I'm just going to do is now to make this a component. And I'm just going to call this divider, and then select both of them. I'm going to actually add some properties to this, and then I'm going to call this question. And I'm going to call this response. And this is already divider, so I'm just going to call this divider plus response. And then this is going to be our icon. So host our icon very soon. And I'm just going to put. So for this, I'm just going to edit this and change this. I'm just going to change the appearance of this. So I'm going to change the appearance to this to show response. So I'm just going to change it to show response true. So now I'm just going to copy this right now, and let's quickly create a variant, and then we're going to call this, or let's call this response, and this is like the defaults, and this is response. And then we're just going to turn off this. We're just going to turn this off. I'm just going to So this is still going to be visible here. This is going to be visible here. Oh, I think it's actually affecting both of them. So what we're just going to do, I'm just going to detach this. So I'm just going to detach this and make sure and try that again. Let me turn this off quickly and see if it affects. Okay, it didn't affect this. So let me try something. I just want to check something and see. Alright, so that was what I wanted to check. So I'll just have to copy this now and push this inside of this. Then we're going to change the color, but we're not going to do that. I'm just going to add like auto layout to this, and then I'll just keep it at 1440. And I'm going to change this to fill, or I guess we're just going to edit the padding. So I'm just going to leave this at 100. So now we're going to duplicate this. So let's make sure. Let's see how that is displaying. I think we didn't add any corner radius, any outline to that. So let me quickly add an outline to that right now. So we're going to give this the gray fill and change it to 0.5. I'm going to change it to outside quickly. So we have it displaying already. So I'm just going to duplicate this. So I'm going to duplicate this and then select both of them and apply auto layout. So I'm just going to apply auto layout to this and give it a gap of like 20. I think 20 will be fine. So I'm going to name these questions. Let's just context. It's like the header. So for this content area now, I'm just going to turn off this and add like 3 more questions. So I'm going to turn this off, add another question, add another question. Alright, so I'm just going to check this out and quickly edit. Oh, we don't need to edit like that. We've already created the content stuff. So we're just going to select this, and select this. So now that we've selected it, I'm just going to change the questions. Oh, no. We should have like, we should select them individually. So the questions for this particular one is, how do I place an order on fresh cards? So that question, I'm just going to click enter there, go back to the next one, and then I use tab to go back to the next one. I hit tab or to go back to the next one. Outside Lagos. That's another question. Enter and then move to the next. And then the final one are your products. So you have to answer everything. Are your products truly organic? Alright, so now final round, we're just going to have like gap of like 60 and see how that feels. Alright, so this is how our Alright, so this is how it looks. And I'm going to change it to black. I don't want it to be gray. I want it to be thick black. Alright, so I think this is perfect. Alright, so now that we've gotten to this part, see you in the next video where we are going to talk about the footer.